Smithfield is the place in Ireland to buy horses. The trading carries on here in the middle of Dublin despite the rain, and despite the fact that the market is illegal and unregistered. It takes place every first Sunday in the month. Prices are low. Ponies are selling for rock-bottom prices. Animal welfare officer Liam Kinsella and his colleague Tony don't like the way the horses are made to gallop over the cobblestones. Nobody approaches Liam directly. He hears about the worst cases of abuse over the telephone.
When I initially started inspecting horses, I would deal with maybe 4 calls, 6 calls in 1 year. Now I would deal with anything from 3 to 6 calls per day.
The horses that make it to Smithfield Market still have some degree of value. The youngsters from the suburbs who work here can barely afford adequate clothing. Yet they somehow find the means to keep their horses alive. Liam takes us to a former garbage dump on the city's outskirts. In Ireland, you have to be 16 and own at least 2.5 hectares of grazing land to own a horse. But in these hard times, many traders turn a blind eye. Cars pulling trailers stop here during the night to unload horses. Only last week, Liam had to shoot 2 animals that were in a bad way.
These horses belong to any number of people. This is council land. They're put here illegally. There's no authorisation to be here. But because of the vastness of the area, it's impossible to police it. And then the amount of money involved in trying to remove all of these animals from this area would be phenomenal.
There have always been stray horses in Ireland, but numbers have never been as high as they are today. How did things get so bad? We asked John Cullinan. He breeds horses for steeplechases. He currently has 60 animals, including 20 mares with foals. For a long time, Ireland was regarded as one great big paddock. Horse breeders didn't even have to pay taxes. That mistake has contributed to the problem.
The Irish studs were probably the first to break what was the unwritten rule of 40 mares per stallion. And ever since that, the average quality would have probably dropped.
John sells horses to buyers in Libya and Qatar. High-performance animals are always in demand. He has even given horses away. But he's also had the unhappy task of having to shoot some of them.
They're not pets, they're here as by and large a business, but you do become attached to mares that have been good to you and race horses that have been good to you. And obviously we'd like to keep them here as long as possible. However, economic reality is that many of them don't pay their way after a few years.
The breeders get their feed from Leona Evans. Her family has made a living from horses for centuries. Horses are expensive, especially for people with no grazing land of their own. Feed costs some €200 a month. Stable costs are extra. That's a lot in a country where 1/6 of the population is unemployed.
We've been in supermarkets, but for people to feed horses was quite expensive, and they really wanted to do the best that they could. So it was really by getting in the cheaper feeds that they were able to do this, because horses were suffering. I mean, they were giving less and they were starving in the winter, especially with no grass.
This animal sanctuary on the outskirts of Dublin provides a refuge for 24 horses. Ireland could do with hundreds more centres like this. Each animal has its own sad history. This horse was rescued from the stable of a banker after animal welfare officers received an anonymous tip-off. The man had neglected the animal after losing everything in the financial crisis. Horses have a pretty low standing right now.
The child bought the pony. He could see that she was in appalling condition, and he gave all his pocket money to buy her so that he could actually give it to the DSPCA because he knew we'd help. But we have come across cases where horses have been swapped for bicycles, they've been swapped for PlayStations, for mobile phones. It is absolutely possible to get a horse in the city now for 20, 30, 40, 50 euros.
Thousands of horses born into captivity are now living wild, but they can't cope with their newfound freedom. They're Ireland's most visible victims of the economic downturn.
We're dealing with a massive amount of horses now, and we seriously believe that the 20,000 figure quite possibly could be true.
The times in which everyone in Ireland wanted to own a horse as a financial investment are over, and the horses are the ones paying the price.